Hi everyone, Demir here from Westmount Wealth Management. Let me start with an image. Picture yourself going down a river that's been flowing steadily for decades. You didn't choose the current, you simply moved with it. Then one day that river empties into a lake. It's still open with no current to carry you anymore. Suddenly, you're the one who has to decide which direction to paddle. This is what a liquidity event can feel like. Maybe you sold a business. Maybe a concentrated stock position was converted to cash. Perhaps there was a generous exit package on the table. For the first time in years, your wealth is no longer tied to a single outcome. And then a different kind of pressure typically shows up. What do I actually do with all of this now? Unlike the years it took to build the nest egg, this decision feels immediate. For some, it can feel outright paralyzing. For most of your life, building wealth was probably a gradual exercise. Savings deployed over time, volatility absorbed along the way, because future contributions kept averaging in. Imperfect timing did not matter much, because tomorrow's paycheck would smooth things out. At a certain point, that dynamic changes completely. Significant capital is ready to be deployed, and how it gets invested matters right away. Nothing about the markets has fundamentally changed, but your exposure to timing and to large numbers certainly has. On the surface, the decision looks pretty simple. Just build a diversified portfolio aligned with your long-term goals. In practice, it rarely feels that simple. What if markets fall the day after I deployed? What if this is precisely the wrong moment? What if handing over the reins means losing the thread entirely? These are not irrational concerns. Behavioral finance actually explains why. Kahneman and Tversky's work on prospect theory shows that losses are felt roughly twice as strongly as gains. So the possibility of immediate regret, otherwise known as buyer's remorse, carries disproportionate psychological weight. So what do most people do? They wait. Hold cash for now, invest gradually, wait for a better entry point. It feels disciplined, and on the surface, it feels safe. But here's the quieter truth. Cash does not stand still. Even a modest 3% inflation rate, when applied to $1 million of uninvested capital, makes that money worth closer to $860,000 in real terms within 5 years. The drag is slow, invisible, and cumulative. Inflation is a tax you pay without ever writing a check. Meanwhile, research from Dimensional Fund Advisors shows that equity markets have delivered positive returns at roughly 70% of 1 year period. And studies from Vanguard and Morningstar comparing lump sum investing to phased investing show that immediate investment has historically outperformed in roughly 60 to 70% of scenarios. The reason is structural. Markets tend to rise more often than they fall. So the decision is not really between risk and safety. It is between market risk now and opportunity cost over time. If the data is relatively clear, why is this decision still so difficult? Because the challenge is not purely mathematical. It is fundamentally behavioral. Think of it like easing into cold water at the beach. Gradual immersion feels manageable, even if the end state is the same. Staged investing often produces lower expected returns. But it persists because it reduces emotional impact of being wrong at a single moment in time. And that matters enormously, because the greatest risk is rarely a poor entry point. The greatest risk is abandoning a sound strategy after the fact. For many families, there's a second layer to all of this, and that is concentration. A family business, a single stock position, a specific asset. Something created the wealth, and diversifying away from it can feel counterintuitive. After all, concentration was rewarded. But over time, the objective quietly shifts from building wealth through concentration to preserving wealth through diversification. And then there's the tax dimension. Embedded capital gains in a long-held position can be substantial. Realizing them all at once may be neither practical nor prudent. Diversification often becomes a multi-year process that balances the cost of remaining concentrated against the premature realization. Both carry trade-offs. At its core, this is not a timing problem. It is an alignment problem. How is capital matched to future spending? How much liquidity is required? What return is actually needed? How much volatility can the plan absorb without forcing a change in course? When those questions are clearly answered, the importance of a single entry point starts to fade away. Without a framework, a large sum of capital feels exposed. Every market movement feels consequential. With structure, that same capital begins to feel intentional. The role of planning isn't to eliminate uncertainty. The role of planning is to ensure that no single decision carries more weight than it should, either practically or psychologically. At Westmount Wealth Management, we approach lump sum investing by integrating deployment strategies with the broader financial plan, aligning capital with time horizons, liquidity needs, and required returns. Each decision is evaluated in the context of the entire balance sheet, never in isolation. Because the goal is not to simply invest the capital. The goal is to position it in a way that can be sustained, adapted, and held with confidence through time. So if you find yourself staring at that still lake, wondering which direction to paddle, remember this. The perfect entry point is an illusion. What matters far more is the structure of the journey that follows. Thanks for watching, and as always, if you have questions, you know where to find us.